I just made a desperate trade in the Flock League in an effort to not only win here in week 8, but to save my season. Let's start here with the state of the fan wagon heading into week 8. So, Thursday Night Football concludes. I'm recording this on Friday around 5 o'clock Eastern. The trade that I made with Mason Dodd just went through. Coming into week 8 here, the lineup looks fine, but Thursday night was a disaster. Jordan Mason, 4 carries for 3 yards. Terrible. Keenan Allen, barely over 8 points. And Zach, on the other side, had Aronde Gadsden, who went off. He scored 18.7 in his tight end slot. Worst case scenario from Thursday Night Football. Now, it's looking almost 100% likely that Nico Collins will not play this week. And Nico Collins is somebody who all week I was trying to move. I was in talks with Badaki about a potential deal, but he couldn't stand not having Nico this week. I was also talking to Nathan a little bit, but he also needs a win and can't be buying somebody who isn't going to be playing in week 8. With Nico being out and Ricky Pearsall being out as well, my options for that last wide receiver slot are incredibly limited. It's Kendrick Bourne on my bench. It's Xavier Legette on my bench, hoping I can ride that big performance from last week, or it's heading to the waiver wire. I looked at Christian Watson, who's coming back for the Packers. I looked at Rashad Bateman, who could be in a good spot for the Ravens if the Bears can score a lot of points and force Lamar to throw the ball. Alec Pierce is somebody I thought of. All of these terrible options as I am trying to win a must-win matchup here in week 8 against Zach, who is also 3-4 just like myself. Now, I'll stop teasing everybody watching this. The trade that went down was I sent Nico Collins to Mason Dodd for T. Higgins and Stephon Diggs. Now, on paper, this probably looks bad. Nico Collins has been disappointing, but I think the sentiment in the community is that he's going to be fine. T. Higgins was awful with Jake Browning. It's gotten a little better with Joe Flacco. And Stephon Diggs has been up and down, having a few good games recently, but he doesn't seem to be a reliable every week play. As somebody who has watched the Texans every week of the season so far, I cannot see how this gets much better for Nico. The offensive line is absolutely terrible. Even though he is the only legitimately good target in that offense and his target share and target numbers have been very, very good, it's not turning into anything. Nico has one game over 4 receptions, and it was in week 3 against Jacksonville where he went 8 for 104 and a touchdown. And I'd like to remind you that that touchdown was the 50-yard bomb on a broken coverage where there wasn't a defender within 20 yards of him. If that one play doesn't happen, if the Jags cover that even remotely well, we're looking at one game this year over 15 fantasy points. And looking at Nico's schedule for the rest of the season, it doesn't look good. He's missing this week against the Niners. Then they have a game against Denver. Houston's offensive line, you might as well have John Doe's out there against the Broncos pass rush. It's not going to be any different. Then he has 4 fine matchups: Jacksonville, Tennessee, Buffalo, and Indianapolis. And then going into the fantasy playoffs, he plays the Chiefs in week 14. And in championship week, he has the Chargers, Arizona, and Vegas before that. So he has some good matchups. He has some bad ones. But looking at the matchups that he's already played, the Rams, the Buccaneers, the Jaguars, the Titans, the Ravens, and the Seahawks, they all allow more points than expected to fantasy wide receivers so far this season. That means that Nico has been in a quote-unquote plus matchup for wide receivers in fantasy every week of the season so far, and he's been terrible. I need to let go of the draft capital that I spent on him. He was my first-round pick. I need to let go of that, and I need to focus only on who is going to score me points going forward. Now, if we look at Nico compared to T. Higgins and Stephon Diggs so far this season, honestly, they've been very similar. Nico's averaging 12.8 PPR points per game. Stephon Diggs is averaging 12.1. T. Higgins is averaging 10.5. And that's with a bunch of games where the Bengals look terrible with Jake Browning. Now, obviously, it is a tiny sample size. But in the last 2 games with Joe Flacco, T. Higgins is averaging 16.5 points per game. That includes 9 targets and about 80 yards. The Bengals defense sucks, just like it did last year, and Joe Flacco has shown that he's not afraid to throw the ball down the field. T. Higgins specifically has a really good schedule for wide receivers the rest of the way. Chicago in week 9 is very good. They play the Steelers again in week 11. They also have 2 matchups against Baltimore, who have allowed a lot of points to fantasy wide receivers. Stephon Diggs' playoff schedule is particularly good. Before the playoffs in week 13, he comes up against the Giants, who are poor against fantasy wide receivers. And then in the playoffs, weeks 15 and 16, the Bills, and the Ravens, who have both been susceptible to teams throwing on them a ton so far this year. I'm not sure which one of these guys I'm going to start here in week 8, but I'm able to plug one of them in instead of some waiver wire bum in order to give me some sort of extra upside in beating Zach this week, because I need a win in week 8. 3-5 would be terrible. I'm comfortable moving off of Nico Collins with him not playing this week with the concussion. He should be back for next week, but we're not sure how severe this concussion is. Most of the time, guys clear the protocol after a week, but who knows what's going to happen. I also, like I said, I don't think the Texans' offense is getting any better. Nobody is coming to save that offensive line. They're not injured, they're just bad. When I looked at my schedule coming up, week 12 was really the only week that I was really struggling with buys. I'm going to need to find a running back because Devon Achane as well as J.K. Dobbins are both on bye. But having an extra guy, an extra body that is playing that week is going to be helpful for me. Overall, I think that the reactions to this may be that I'm gifting Mason a wide receiver 1 rest of season. I don't think that's the case. I'm perfectly happy with this deal. I think that either Diggs or T. Higgins could come very close to Nico's production rest of season, if not outscore him. I think that is absolutely in the range of outcomes. If you look at preseason, Nico Collins and T. Higgins were viewed about a round and a half apart. Not a crazy difference. And honestly, the Bengals offense has been more functional than the Texans has been since Joe Flacco has come in. So I'm making a bet against Nico Collins here rest of the season. I'm making a bet on mainly T. Higgins, but also I'm happy with Stephon Diggs. Hopefully this leads us to a W here in week 8 and many more W's to come rest of the season. Thank you guys for listening to this instant trade reaction from my first trade of note in the Flock League this season. Let me know what you thought. If I won, if I lost, don't be too mean. My feelings are fragile at this moment. Maybe when I'm above 500, I'll gain some thicker skin, but as of now, please be nice. And say some prayers for T. Higgins and Stephon Diggs this weekend. Good luck, everybody.